Good morning, and thank you for coming to this talk. I try to finish in due time, and as stated, I will be happy to answer any questions during the lunchtime. I be there after the session, so people do not get disturbed with their feeding timing, okay? Okay, the topic that I like to cover for you has to do with this issue of diversity and uniqueness. I guess I go to the green. That's perfect. Okay, here you have my disclosures. Those belonging to the pharmaceutical industry are in blue. None of them, all of them are not given, but I hope to get a clinical trial for Hoffman Roche in a few months, so I mark that. The rest has to do with societies, foundations, and non-lucrative institutions. So more than a conflict, I would say that I need to say thank you to all of them, because they really support many of the things we do. And I said we. I don't mean in a very old classical numeric number. I'm talking myself. But in this profession, you know that we always work with people. So I will be talking about myself and the things I've done, but it's never a solo a cappella song. I always have a band, and I always have a group of people with me, and I'm very happy for that. I think this is one of the secrets of a mental health profession in children and adolescents. Well, the new concept. Why I said the new? Well, I think that being bombarded with many different aspects. The list up there has to do with a definition of Simon Baron-Cohen that talks not only about the DSM-5 autism level 3, which is the most severely disabled, level 2, which is the average, the classical, level 1, who was more or less the classical Asperger, but also the neuroatypical. In other words, now we have people that I say they are proud of having autism spectrum disorders. They value their skills and the way of doing things, and they don't want to be treated as patients. So I think that this is something that we have to respect and that we have to consider. And it was not a long time ago that idea would have been considered crazy by many of us, including myself, to be honest. But now I realize that we have to change our minds and respect the will of the people. And that's part of the new approach that I think we're going to be facing in the next coming years. Why these people think that they should not be labeled or treated as patients? As you remember from the DSM-5 system, we have, to make a diagnosis, we need two aspects. One, we need the symptoms or whatever, and we need the negative impact. In other words, we need the symptoms causing a problem for the person. In our case, for the child, the youngster, or the adult. And that negative impact can be at the personal level because of suffering, of distress, because of family problems, difficulties, educational challenges, employment becoming very, very hard, or social opportunities being lost and no coverage. In other words, if you have symptoms and you have a negative impact, it is clear that you have a disorder, and then you treat the disorder. But there are people now who are saying, I have the symptoms, but I don't have the impact. So don't call me a disorder. Don't tell me that I am sick. I have these characteristics. I might say that the impact and the symptoms have to do with a person, but also it has to do with the environment. In some environments, people with this level of symptoms will have this level of impact, and in other environments, it will be much less impact, because we adapt our response, our structure, our demands, our supports. So when people say there is no treatment for autism in level 1, 2, or 3, it's not true. We may not have medical treatment, curative treatment, but we have a lot of things to do in the impact arena, in the second part. So challenge that vision that autism cannot be treated. We are very efficient in changing this second part and improving the quality of life of people with autism spectrum disorder. This new conception asks us about many questions. I could have put more, but these were some of the ones bother me more or less. Do we have more cases? It seems that everybody agrees that more cases are getting referred to our clinics, to our centers. Does it mean that they just come in because somebody discovers them, that we have better mechanisms, more awareness, better sensibility, or because there is more, because there is an increase? Because now the older fathers having children may lead to an increase in prevalence, for instance. Or like now in Spain, there is a big scandal about the use of Depakine, valproic acid, during pregnancy. And honestly, I think it's a shame that in many of these forums, I found a slide that I presented something like 6 years ago about the risk of valproic acid in pregnancy related to autism and developmental disabilities. And to be honest, very few people pay attention to that. And the media failed to pay attention. And the public authority failed to pay attention. And now, last week, all of a sudden this explosion came in the media in Spain saying this is an epidemic. It's like thalidomide. And it's going to be the same. Huge amount of families are getting involved, becoming associated, and starting to go to court. So I think that we are witnessing, we will witness a great scandal. Don't get me wrong, Depakine, as you know, is very good for bipolar disorder, it's very good for epilepsy, but it's not good for pregnancy, okay? Are we missing the younger? The younger are not that clear because autism evolves as time goes by in the first few years. It's not that you have like pneumonia, clack, all the symptoms, no. It comes small step by step. So it's difficult to say when do you put the line. So it might be that in places where you put the line very early, you get cases that are not clear-cut later on. Are we missing the older? Let me tell you, yes, we are missing the older. They are lost, and it is our responsibility to find them and to support them. Do we understand their needs? I'm not sure. I don't think we ask them. I don't think we should listen to them to see what they need from us. Are we performing the right research? I don't think so either. I don't think we are asking them, what kind of research do you want? And the same way, do you think that our standard programs fit in their needs of this new population? Certainly in our program, it does not. So we have to reinvent the program. And this is challenging, but it's very exciting, and it's very good for all. So many questions about this. I'd like to cover these 4 areas with you. First, learning the real picture. Then, research methodology. 3, empowering people. And 4th, disseminating information. This is the script of the movie. Learning the real picture. We just finished the ESTILL project. The ESTILL project came from the European Parliament. The European Parliament considered that autism was more frequent and more important to the Europe community than it had been thought. So they got this written declaration. In order to have an official written declaration by the European Parliament, you need to have 418 representatives signing the declaration. And they did, or we did, or they did, got 18 representatives. And that calls for detection, diagnosis, evidence-based treatments, foster of research, prevalence studies, and very important, to encourage the exchange of best practices. So we had a very interesting session there with the politicians, and they were persuaded that this was something that it had to be regarded carefully. So they ordered the European Commission to run a call for tender to cover all these issues. And several groups presented, and our group, ASDEU, won. That's the Autism Spectrum Disorder in the European Union. It was won by our Spanish National Institute of Health, and Dr. Posada, who is an epidemiologist, nothing to do with autism, public health officer of the WHO, you name it, brilliant person, was the one to chair that group, and he was kind enough to get me as his advisor for this task. So the group is made of 22 teams coming from 14 countries. And this is beautiful, because you have countries in the north, in the south, in the east, and in the west. But it's complicated. Languages are different. The level of development is different. The health systems are completely different. The educational policies are different. So in theory, it's terrific to have these multinational studies. And we all say we need that. But then you will see how smart you have to be to try to find a solution. These are the places from the different countries. We do have most of the most important institutions, National Institutes of Health from Portugal, Italy, Belgium, Autism Europe, National Autistic Society, universities in different parts, King's College. We had everybody there. Many people, not everybody, but many people. And these are the names of the leaders of the groups. And if you visit this webpage, asdeu.eu, you'll find a lot of information in English, in Spanish, about this project. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit as an example about the prevalence study. There were other studies in adults and politics, early detection, but certainly we will not cover that. But we will publish. So many of the things that I'm going to tell you are not published. So please refrain from taking pictures. I know some journals don't like the material to be, advertised before publication. So it's not only my data, it's the data of my colleagues. So please refrain from using telephones or cameras, please. Okay, we got, for the field studies, we considered these 8 countries where we did not have population registries, the field studies. And we took other 4 that had population registries. France has not a national, but had 2 regions in France that had this registry. Denmark, Finland, and Iceland have national registries. And the other countries there, we do not have population registries. And I doubt that we will have ever, because the law for confidence, the law for personal data, all these strict laws almost forbid that. I did my part also in my country, in Gipuzkoa County, and what we did was the classical warning, screening, and diagnosis. The target, in all the countries, the target was 7 to 9 years old. Why? Because the CDC also considers the 8-year-old, so we thought it would be good to be able to compare. This is our area, and these are the outline of the different services that we have. Remember that this is just 700,000 inhabitants, very small area, 50 per 50 kilometers. And we are 236 people, staff working on autism, around 800 families there. And we have all kinds of services. I will not explain all of that, but it's a very rich in terms of support and services, because the 92% of the funding comes from the government. 8% comes from the families, if the families receive a subsidy. So they get a subsidy in one hand, and they give the money to us. If they don't get subsidy, there is nothing that they give. So it's free. and connected it with all the national services of health, education, social services, you name it. Okay, so this program was awarded in 2016 the European Citizen Award by the European Parliament. And I think it's very important. It's the first time that this medal is given to child psychiatry, child adolescent, child adult project. And what really impressed me was what the politicians said. They said that the reason for the medal was that the whole organization of Gautena had put in practice the values, the principles of the European Constitution to people with disabilities. And I thought that was fantastic. That really was very, very good. So I think it's good that our politicians are getting better, I think, in looking at these things. Okay, so what we did first, we reviewed all the cases previously identified in the regional program. This free, only one regional program where education and health sends all the cases. So we had 56 children, aged 7 to 9, that fulfilled criteria. And then we developed, in many countries, this teacher nomination form. That was born in Colorado, Hepburn, in 2008. And basically it tells the teacher to tell you if there is a child that has these characteristics, more or less. One, perhaps two, I don't know. If this works, it will be very helpful because that will eliminate the need to do a general screening of the population in the countries where the children are in schools. But it worked in Colorado, but let's see in Europe. The system that we had, the teacher identified, quote unquote, identify one case, but it was anonymous. The teacher did not give us the name. The name was coded and sent to the National Health Institute in Madrid. And for every nominated, we asked the same teacher to select 3 controls that were not nominated, okay? So we had that group. And to all of them, we offer the possibility via the teacher to fill the social communication questionnaire, the SCQ. And those positives, above 15 or above, were called for a diagnosis. We made a diagnosis. We ensured from the beginning that all the cases were to receive treatment and support afterwards. So we didn't want to make discoveries and saying to the people, now you go home and you wait. Everybody received follow-up. So that's what basically we did to record. Previously done, we covered the whole community, response was very good, and we got a sample of 9,000 children, 7 to 9. I did once one study with 800, and I swear that never do another one like that. All of a sudden, I had 9,000. So I had insomnia, I have nightmares, I have the whole thing. But that's the way it goes. I had more people with me too. And we have the European Union money, so which is good, because they cover for everything. So we had a participation of around 60%, which is not good, but it's not bad. That's the kind of participation that you get, and that's the problem. There were 14,000 students, and we got 9,000 students on the sample. We got, from the participating schools, we identified 10 new cases that had not been identified before. For the non-participating schools, we estimated the same ratio, 6 classes, 6 students. So that's an estimation. By the way, we had equal number of children with autism, recognized autism in both places. So there was no bias of one school and the other, okay? So the total number that we got in our province is 72, which is 0.48, with a margin 95 confidence, 0.38, 0.61, which is rather low. Please don't take photographs. Thank you. This is lower than what many people expect and what the Americans say. This is top secret, okay? This is the population selected by methodology. Some countries did not authorize to use directly the teacher nomination form because they say that confidentiality That was not good. The teachers shouldn't do that. So there's some countries, Austria, some regions in Italy, and some regions in Ireland, only allowed to go directly to the families. And we got 32,000 screening STQ, and got a reply of, I think, 50%, around 20%, close to 20,000. But it's low. It's lower than if you do the second part, the teaching nomination and the STQ, because the school gets involved in doing that. And if the school supports you, the family collaborated more. But you'll see that we got a sample of more than 500,000 children in Europe, 631,000 children that we tried to establish what system will be the best. And the total number considered was 7,000. So it was not good, but it was not good in this section, and this is the prevalence estimated. And you see there are differences in the countries. We were very low, in fact. Others were like us, others were higher. You could say why there is a difference. There should be a difference. The natality rate is different in different countries. So you have more children, probably you have more children with autism if you carry the risk for autism, right? If you delay having children because you're getting older and you want to have your establishment before, you may have more risk. If children survive stormy perinatal problems in your country, you may have more. So there might be some differences that could be explained. So it's not a scandal, but there are differences quite important. Nevertheless, in the population registries, you see they are more homogeneous in terms of the frequency. And it goes, 0.7, 1.2 in Denmark, Iceland, 2.6. The reason probably is that in Iceland, they make the diagnosis very, very, very early. They see all the children when they are young, and they make this diagnosis. And probably some of them later on, come up having other problems. We don't know yet. We have to analyze it. This is why this is provisional. There are many reasons to explain all these conflicts that we had. And Eric von Bonn has just published last month a beautiful piece of work. It's a masterpiece about the rising prevalence of autism. And they say, before, in the old days, we used to go to the specialist schools and the centers. Now we go to the community, which is great. What about the instruments? The STQ has not been validated in the regular population. The STQ has not been validated in different languages. And in Europe, we have so many languages. Let me tell you about languages in Africa and in other places of the world. I mean, this is very important. Low participation in regular schools is very different to go to special schools where the families are more concerned. They belong to the school. In the regular schools, it's more difficult. Every program like this, we had no information about the non-participants, why they didn't want to participate. They couldn't care, they were really concerned, they didn't want the stigma, who knows? No information about them. Different definition of caseness. Some people do based on the records, like the CDC in the States. The CDC does not examine children. Caution. When we got the numbers of children identified by the teachers, identified by STQ, and then we did an assessment in all of them, almost 3/4 had other problems, but had no autism spectrum disorder. So my point is that you need a well-trained, with experienced team to make the final decision about who has them. So it's not just to see the score of the ATI, the ADOs, which of course we perform, but is, as Eric says, the validity of case determination requires a higher order process. It's not just the scoring. It needs experience. It needs sharing data. None of these studies consider preschools, so we're missing that population. And of course, we had to accept children diagnosed with DSM-4 and with DSM-5, and the criteria are not exactly the same, and the same happens in all these studies. So each survey has some strengths and limitations. Next month, no, September. Beginning of September, we'll have a meeting in Luxembourg with the Department of Health of the European Union to review all the results, and will be made public and all that. And so far, our conclusion is that if you want to know the prevalence, either you have to go to national registries and ensure that they are good, to probably more easier to define some observatory areas in different countries and give them excellence methodological level, support staff, and use them for years. This is the leaders of the group in Madrid in the last meeting that we had, smiling as if there were no problems, but optimistic people. Aims through trials, research methodology. Look at this slide. I showed this to the European Parliament members, and I told them, in Europe, we are 500 million people, 28 countries. If you go for dementia, including Alzheimer, you estimate 6.3 million people. And everybody, at least in Spain, is concerned about dementia and autism very little, also a little, also concerned, but dementia is a big problem. Autism, depending on the figures, is about the same. Dementia happens at the end of the life, happy life. Autism starts at the beginning, and although evolves, remains there. And both conditions affect at least 3 persons. Dementia, the partner, and 2 kids. Autism, the parents, father and mother, and 1 brother. So there are many similarities in these aspects. EU aims, the Aims 2 Trial Consortium. This is Declan Murphy, the head of the project from the United Kingdom, and this is the large group that we met last month in Munich for the kickoff meeting. We are 48 partners from 10 countries, from Europe, from the States, and even from South Africa, from Stellenbosch. So this is a consortium. This consortium has obtained 117 million euro to develop this research. It's the widest, largest, incredible amount of money that has ever been devoted not only to mental health, but to autism. No other condition got this amount of money. So hopefully we should be good. The project structure is the validation of markers. In Aims 1, they were trying, still going on, identifying biomarkers, and we want to use them to classify the groups. And right now we already finished in trial network groups. Okay, I thought I had a slide with this, but it's not. Okay, the whole Europe is covered now with teams that will do that. The goal is to create, to engage the pharmaceutical industry in developing new products, to create objective measures, and to engage the stakeholders from the beginning, in the middle, at the end, all the time on this. Empowering people. A few years ago, I got published this paper in the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Psychiatry, and it's called 10 Tips to Support Me. Me, meaning me, but I do not have autism. So instead of talking about myself, what I did was to meet with group of youngsters, group of adolescents, group of adults, families group, and ask them about the views about this draft. And they made corrections, and they changed things, and they finally agreed that was the version to be done. Let me tell you what they agree. These are the 10 points. The first one says, I'm not autistic. I'm first, foremost, and always a person, a student, a child, and I have autism. Do not confuse me with my condition, and please do not use the term in a negative or inconsiderate way. I deserve to be respected. I am an individual. Having autism does not make me the same as other people with autism. Make an effort to know me as an individual, to understand my strengths, my weaknesses and me. Ask me and my friends and my family if I cannot reply about my dreams. I deserve services, just like all the children. Services for me begin early. Autism, or it will be when recognized, a public health issue in many countries of the world. There are instruments to screen it. They should be applied in the framework of screening for all the developmental disabilities. If you start soon, my life will be different. And remember that about 1/4 of my siblings will have autism or other problems. Help them. They are an important part of my life. I belong to the healthcare system, just like all children. Include me in regular health care. The healthcare system should adapt to me, limiting waiting times and ensuring that I understand what is to be done by using, for example, easy-to-wear, easy-to-read materials, pictograms, technological means, and so forth. Other patients will benefit as well. I belong with other children. Do not separate me from them because you want to treat me, educate me, or care for me. Don't separate them from me. We closed all our special schools in our county years ago. I should be placed in regular schools and regular community settings, and special support should be provided for me in those places. I have something to teach other children and something to learn from them. I belong to my family. Plan with me for my future and my transitions. I am the one who should decide, and when my ability to do so is limited, my family and friends will speak for me. No government agency can take the place of my family, and please make sure that our society values my family's generosity when they support me on society's behalf. I deserve the right to evidence-based services. These might not be convenient or easy, but when I get them, I do better. Do not substitute my educational, health, or social support with medication. I may require medication, and I look forward to new developments in biological treatments, but you must be cautious in using them. Count on me for research ventures. Get me involved with all my rights protected. I also want to help others. I belong to society. Engage me in vocational training. I want to contribute. The services I need during my adult life should be guided by self-determination, relationship, and inclusion in all the activities of my community. Your goal must be to adapt the environment I have to face and modify settings and attitudes. I also will make our society better. Number 9, I have human rights. And I face discrimination for many reasons. Many of us live in poverty with no community support system. Some of us are immigrants or minorities, including sexual minorities. Keep a gender perspective. Girls and women with autism are often at greater risk of violence, injury, or abuse. Number 10, I belong in the world. I have a role to play. We and my legal representatives want to be involved in policy making, its development and its evaluation. You need my help to know what it should be done. Empower me. Remember my motto, nothing about me without me. These 10 tips were published free by the Journal of the American Academy of Neurology and Psychiatry. So if you go to Google and you say Fuentes 10 tips, that's it. You got it, okay? Very easy. They have been translated in 42 languages of the world and in 2 classes of pictograms as well. And the Americans understood that the target area covered is about 4,000 million, in Europe, million people. So we really cover the world with this empowering instrument. And we really are very optimistic about it. To end up, I'd like to tell you about disseminated information. ESTILL is the European Society for Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, includes 32 national child and adolescent psychiatry societies, some of the European Union and others of the whole Europe. And they have established an Autism Spectrum Disorder Working Party, which I have the responsibility to chair. And I have Amaya Arbaz and Patricia Hollin that will be supporting me. And our task is to produce what will be called the SCAP practice guidance for SD. It will not be a very ambitious academic thing like the NICE or any other guidelines. We don't say guidelines, we say guidance. It's a brief summary, and we are looking forward, especially areas in Europe, areas in the world that do not have services, and how to start having services. Simple things that will make a change. This will be finished by November, December 2018. It will be reviewed by a team of experts. Then it will be the first time that it will be endorsed by the executive board of ESCAP, and it will be published in IACAPAP as an open publication. So you'll wait for it. Second possibility, you have the e-textbook of IACAPAP, almost 500,000 page views, and you have the chapter on autism spectrum disorder that I wrote with colleagues from different parts of the world. And I was smart, because I couldn't write a chapter talking about my own reality. I needed people from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America to tell me their reality. And that's the way it was done. It's been translated in all these 4 languages, and coinciding with this Congress in Prague, is the whole book and the chapter is translated into Spanish by these 2 persons. Matias and Fernanda have been great in doing this. Matias is here in the Congress, so we have this chapter. This chapter is a digital chapter, free digital chapter. So you can click and see all these beautiful presentations, 30 to 40 minutes each, in 4 languages for all these experts there. So many, many possibilities. Then we have our chair here. We have the MOOC, the Massive Open Line on Course, distributed by IACAPAP. And it's available in 6 languages, subtitled in those languages. And Petrus made a terrific chapter presentation on autism spectrum disorder. So I think this is another free, very accessible material. And finally, I think by the end of 2019, no, the middle of 2019, we will have the 3rd edition of the official definition of Autism Europe. Autism Europe has 90 societies all over Europe. And we participated, we did the first 3, the first 2, now we're going to the 3. And we are talking about new things like the baby at risk, the premature death that we didn't know before. I don't know if you know that, but there is a terrific study in Sweden which shows that people with autism have a premature death. The people in general, the whole group, die 16 years before expected. When you compare them, and they compare that with the general population registry and match on sex, age, and county, if you had severe intellectual disability and autism, you die 30 years before the people of your age. Main reason, epilepsy. If you were in the middle, level 2, that was 16. And the reasons are the same that will kill us. Obesity, lack of exercise, smoking, drinking, all these things. But for those that were in the top level, Asperger or Asperger, they die 10 years before expected. And the main reason was suicide. And that's very, very hard. I mean, that's very hard to take. Suicide is 9 times more frequent in this population than in the rest of the population of their age. So it's very important that we get sensitized to all these things. And the parents are going to be very involved in that. So to finish, I finished right in time. it's time to create the future. It will not be just our group. I think we all must create our future. Thank you so much for your work and for your attention.